if you knew the crops were coming, the crop shortages were here, you'd have to make excuses for it so the general populace wouldn't awaken because they could get angry at the leaders for not, preparing. So how would you control that? And then, what excuses would you give for the cover of the crop losses?
Yeah, no, I get totally what you're saying too. The thing that I'm concerned about too, David, is like what I've noticed is when it rains, it doesn't necessarily have to rain like all day kind of thing, but like even if it pours for a good half hour, the amount that's coming down is like ridiculous. We're keeping the shows moving along. We got David Dubai from Adapt 2030. Always love when David stops by. We always learn something new here. I know you really want to cover crops here today and food and all that good stuff.
Yeah, why would you want all natural sprays when we can use DDT and glyphosate for our gardens? Are you kidding me? How dare you try to promote a natural product? Let's bring it back to the petrochemical companies and enrich them and make sure they do more damage to the environment and blame us, the humans, so then we can get locked down more and then pay a global tax for the destruction the corporations are doing. Perfect symbiosis. Your crops are gone this year. Watch for it.
In terms of crops, what would you say is your best bang for your buck? Like if you're going to start your own crops, and again, I know it's based upon demographics, but we'll have to speak in generalities here. What would you say are like the top 3 to 5 things that people need to have for what's right around the corner crop-wise?
Well, it depends. Are you looking for natural medicines? Are you looking for natural pesticides or herbicides for other plants? Or are you looking for the human body to put some nutrition inside of it, superfoods, etc.? To say to grow a plant, there's many different ways to think about growing what you're growing, because you brought up a great point there. What are these natural remedies that we used to use to keep insects out of our homes, to keep insects off the rest of our plants, to keep animals away from our plants? Because we're having a tremendous problem with rabbits this year. We've replanted our garden 3 times. We've lost it 3 times. We ringed in one, so we got several small gardens and they turned into one large garden. So we ringed in one of them with some 1x1 woven netting covered fence. It was a welded wire fence. And that kept everything out. So that garden is doing really good. But the one that we didn't wrap, which we're going to today, we're going to put some spikes down and put the fence up there too. What's a natural thing to keep these pests and predators away? Not only the ones that fly with the cicadas and the Japanese beetles, but now we got these rabbits coming in and field mice, etc. So I don't know which one you're talking about and which one you'd like to discuss, because they're all valid in terms of if you don't have a supply chain. And what we understand is credit, and this is the biggest thing I want to get at here, and irregardless if it's food or pest management or delivery of foods, everything in our farming system revolves on credit. Even that bag of seed that you might find in your store, $2, $3, $1 packets of seed. Without that forward credit in a functional banking system, none of that arrives at all. None. Nobody's paying cash for all these goods that we're using in our agricultural sphere of the world. You think these big agribiz farms on 10,000 acres can run like paying cash for even their fuel, like the amount of fuel that they use in these operations? But then again, getting the things delivered to the stores that are involved in the agricultural A to B to even get that food on your plate, that involves credit too. Do you think these big box stores are small garden centers? Do you think they're paying cash for everything that comes in the door there? Of course not. They're paying a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day note. So if our banking system disappears or there's a contraction or a lockup for a period of time, everything disappears. Everything.
This is Mysteries in the Histories. Over a period of 6 weeks in 1994, the small town of Oakville, Washington was hit with a bizarre string of storms that rained weird gelatinous blobs all over the town. And then people started getting sick. This is the weird and still unsolved mystery of the Oakville blobs. It began raining the clear gelatinous goop on the 7th of August. No one knew where it came from or what it was. The blobs contained similar-looking white cells as humans. People in the town who had contact with the blobs began feeling sick and scared a few hours later. Residents in the small city reported that what fell from the sky was not water, but gooey, slimy, clear and translucent blobs the size of a grain of rice. Over the next 3 weeks, in an area measuring 20 square miles, there would be 5 more events of the terrifying ooze raining down on unsuspecting citizens. There were reports of people developing flu-like symptoms from contact or proximity to the blobs, even of animals dying. The very day of the raining blobs. So what was it? And was it making people sick? A sample of the Oakville blobs was sent to the Hazardous Material Unit at the Department of Ecology of Washington State. Once received microbiologist Mike McDowell found 2 species of bacteria in the Oakville blobs, stating one of these was known to infect the human digestive system. But scientist Mike Osweiler of the Washington State Department said they found a number of cells of various sizes and 2 types of bacteria in the blobs, but were unable to identify them. They did, however, note that the cells did not have nuclei. This was significant because it refuted a previous claims that the blobs contained human-like white blood cells, which do have nuclei. So what were the Oakville blobs? One theory is that it was jellyfish or parts of jellyfish dispersed into rain clouds by bombing runs carried out by the Air Force. Another theory, fluid waste from an airplane toilet, but the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration pointed out that this would have been blue, not translucent. Still another theory is that of an example of panspermia, an event dropping the unknown cells down upon the Earth. Panspermia is the hypothesis that life exists throughout the universe, distributed by space dust, meteoroids, asteroids, comets, and maybe even clouds of raining blobs perhaps. What if it was fluid waste from a UFO or UAP toilet? Just think about that for a minute. Ever since the 14th century, there have been reports of a substance very similar to the blobs in Oakville being found elsewhere, called star jelly, astral jelly, or astromyxin, named after the legend that it falls from the sky during meteor showers. What if the blobs never rained in the first place, that they emerged from a more earthly plane? This would require overlooking the witness statements of those who saw the blobs fall. But it has been a theory. All the original uncollected blobs have long disappeared, and there are no known remaining samples of the Oakville blobs, including at the Washington Department of Health. They apparently have no records of ever receiving any, but allegedly. The Washington State Department took all known samples and somehow misplaced them. Inter alia, frog spawn, sodium polyacrylate crystals or algae have been the source of other blob events. However, there are many unexplained instances of the raining goop, including in 2013 when slime was found at the Ham Wall Nature Reserve in Somerset, England. Despite sending samples for DNA testing to the Natural History Museum, just like in Oakville, no conclusion was ever reached or explanation given. Raining blobs of Oakville is another one of the great mysteries in the histories. Sign up to our show notes email list and get access to longer episodes of Mysteries in the Histories just for signing up. Signing up for the show notes, you get behind-the-scenes thoughts and points we sometimes can't relay over social media platforms. Brought to you by ITM Trading. ITM Trading has spent the last 28-plus years developing a team of expert researchers and gold and silver analysts to make this possible. Simply put, we build strategies which are historically proven to protect your wealth and assets through any economic downturn. 866-834-1422. That's 866-834-1422.
So then you have to start thinking outside, okay, well, how am I going to take care of those pests? If I grow that food, that corn and sugar beets and whatever else you might grow, then how do I protect it? Because without having that complete circle in a vision of how to protect, maintain, harvest, and then store it, we're all going to dive in with our fingers into some stores somewhere. It's an impossibility to live on your own. Even the Amish out here, they, order from the outside world, for a better term. So I was going somewhere with the point, but I lost it. So back to you, I guess.
It's all right, man. I do so much throughout the day. It's ridiculous.
Oh, man, one of those days. Mondays is a Monday.
It's a Mondays, and it's a Memorial Day too. Although there'll be no barbecue, at least not out here. It's pretty nasty day out by us, so probably not happening there. But let's tie it into a video from 4 days ago. Farmers warning, here it comes. And again, I did a solo shot. It was about a month or so ago. We had some warnings come out of England, so there were some European warnings there. But I still get a lot of naysayers out there. David was saying, "Nah, my store is still full. I don't see what you guys are talking about. I don't need to be as prepared as you guys are saying." What was some farmers warning here that you had from the past week?
Well, it's just different areas across the planet that are experiencing far below what was forecast yield. I talked to a friend of mine, John, over in the UK just yesterday. He's helping me with my website, and he was saying that there's going to be little if no potatoes. That it's been so wet and so soggy that they literally can't get anything in the ground across the UK. So that would be just one section. And then we go down to Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay, states of emergency because of before they were having drought, and then they had these massive record floods during the harvest season. But then these rivers and everything are overspilling their banks onto the storage facilities, which is ruining the crop that was already harvested. And we go down to Australia, and they're having problems also with their crops in the ground. Take a look at China. They're just getting flooded left, right, and center again in different parts of the nation. Before last year and the year before, it was more in the central Yellow River area, but this time it's much further south. So everything, Hong Kong north up to Shanghai, if you make that into a rectangle going west out there, is just super soaked this year. And even in Vietnam, they're having difficulty, too much rain. Wherever you look, there's difficulties growing crops, and it's just this amplified weather system that was forecast to be here. This is it. From this point, getting reliable crops based on the amplifying systems that we're experiencing is going to be more and more difficult. This is why I don't know geopolitically and all these things that we're seeing happen across the world. A war is inevitable to cover the tracks and tip over the table here to create the distraction for escape. But I do believe a lot of it is predicated on disguising the reason there won't be so many abundant yields coming out. And how do you explain that to the populace as their food price increases to the point where they're spending all of their disposable income on food, rent, and that's it. And there's nothing else left. I mean, at that point, that's a hopeless society. Very dull. All happiness is extracted from that. What would you do? Eric, I'll ask you. If any of the crops were coming, the crop shortages were here, you'd have to make excuses for it so the general populace wouldn't awaken, because they could get angry at the leaders for not, preparing. So how would you control that? And then, what excuses would you give for the cover of the crop losses?
Yeah, no, I get totally what you're saying too. The thing that I'm concerned about too, David, is what I've noticed is when it rains, it doesn't necessarily have to rain all day kind of thing, but even if it pours for a good half hour, the amount that's coming down is ridiculous. Real wet rain that comes down. I remember one day last week, it only rained for 20 minutes or something, and it just, the streets were flooded. It was crazy. Who's to say that they're not geoengineering things where they could just kind of pick apart different farms where they send over a little storm for an hour and just kind of flood it out type of thing. So that's what I'm concerned about there too. But I totally get what you're saying, man. They have to try to keep the people with pitchforks at bay here as long as they can. When do you think? You still think it'll be the end of this year when we really kind of see it everywhere here in the United States in our grocery stores? Especially with produce. Let's just kind of stay on that side with the agriculture, with produce and stuff like that. Do you think it'll be more visible this fall in stores?
You were describing a river from the sky, and that's going to just become the norm, where if crops are in the fields, they'll get washed out or damaged from just the rainfall itself. And look at the nutrition of the crops. As you say, yeah, some supermarkets are full, but what's contained in those boxes from factories that they're sludge fooding out to make it appear that the store shelves are full? Go and do this, anybody out there, as you're walking along. Actually see how many deep the item is on the shelf, because I've gone into many a store and it's 1 deep or 2 deep, covering the whole, what would have been a quarter of a section of the aisle. But it's they took the case out and just spread it out to just give the facade of one box, covering, say, oh, this is full. And as soon as you take one box, then it makes an obvious hole. They're trying to give you the idea in your mind that thing, and they're reducing the size of the aisles, shortening the length of the aisles, also the height of what was previously aisles. So if you're taking away a front, quarter section and then removing one full shelf top, and you notice that when they do that, they re-engineering with a different kind of quote unquote feng shui to make it more open and appealing, and you can definitely see way more of the store. You're walking down and those things are well over head high at the very top. You kind of have to even reach up and get it. But notice those shelves are being removed now so you can see through the entirety of the store. So how much shelf space is that being reduced out of there? And then think about the nutrition that's included in some of these frankenfoods that are making their way to the shelves, and the amount of new GMO crops that are in play, and where are those fresh fruits and vegetables really coming from? You need to ask yourself. It's not coming from down the street at Farmer John's place over there. It's probably come from California, it's come from Mexico, it's coming from somewhere. Everything's been irradiated, and the foods that we're getting really have very, very little nutrition. So you growing your own or reaching out, buying from the Amish or buying from a farmer's market, knowing somebody who touches the food that has the ability to grow food and deliver it to you. It's not just because there's food there. You got to look at what's included or what's in the food that they're trying to give you. That's more of a thing as well.
Yeah, I know the frankenfood definitely. I mean, I've seen some viral TikTok videos, a compilation video of some of the latest frankenfood of like people cutting open a watermelon and it looks like rubber, and they're trying to like break it. Like real watermelon kind of like snap. You seen that?
Oh, I've seen that one too. Yeah, and I saw another one with the fake dyes because they're injecting a lot of watermelons too. Please be careful.
A banana too. Somebody was trying to just snap like a banana, and it was just like rubber. It was like Play-Doh almost. Like you could like twist it and contort it into like an animal kind of thing. I was like, man, it's getting bizarre out there. But one of the points I would make, there was an article that came out last week that I covered on a solo show where it said, I forget what research poll it was. I don't know if it was Pew or one of those other ones. They basically said that most Americans, like 75 to 80% of Americans, now consider fast food to be a luxury. That's not a good sign, folks. When 3/4 out of everyone is saying fast food is a luxury, can people really even go into the grocery stores and afford to put together a meal which is supposed to be more nutritious? You know what I mean? And the answer is no. The reason why the shelves may look more full is because people aren't buying it. They can't afford to buy it, or they don't want to buy it, I guess. I don't know. It's a little deceptive too as well.
I wanted to just quickly say something about the fast food. That was the backup to most people. During the COVID time, you weren't allowed to go to supermarkets, and B, the supermarkets got really expensive. So everybody thought that for the rest of their lives, they could just rely on fast food as a backup. And everybody out there, you understand what I'm talking about. Now suddenly that fast food has become ridiculously expensive. I just did a video because I was traveling for Lunar New Year in Taiwan, and we did go to McDonald's to pick up some drinks and things when we were going to somebody else's house. So as I was standing there waiting in line in a kiosk, not even a line where a human takes your payment, everybody was computer ordering. Got a little slow, so I thought, all right, I'm going to go take photos of all the products over there in the machine itself. So I was just playing around, just pressing it, taking a snapshot, pressing it. The price for like a Big Mac, for example, is about $3 US, a little bit less. But over here, you look at that same thing, it's like $8. And almost everything unanimously, you can still get, it was like a bacon burger for $1.25 over in Taiwan. Here you can't touch that thing for under like $5. And that value meal that was 18 something was only $4.99. Well-to-do country like Korea, Japan, Taiwan, how is it possible that the fast food that's been imported on a ship overseas costs you 3 or 4 times less than it does in the place that they make it? That is, so for me, there's a lot of like, whoa, huge red flags here that, doing that video opened my eyes to knowing that it had gone on a ship to get over there. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is, okay, if we can't rely on fast food, or some people did, then what's their backup plan?
Yeah, well, that's the question we all have to ask. I mean, I know personally for me in general, like once everything kind of shuts down, I'm trying to prime my body a little bit better with this, but, more intermittent fasting, which is obviously, healthy for you. I'm doing it 2 days. With intermittent fasting, I do every day. With kind of just complete fasting, I try to do at least once a day with on Fridays or whatever. But that might be an option for some, but we still got to eat.
We don't have to worry about not having food to last. We have my Patriot supply. And right now, you can save $200 on a 3-month food kit with Adapt 2030. Adapt and stay prepared.
Outside of growing your own stuff and obviously having some connections to someone who's able to do that, with a cow and butcher and get your own meat and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work, though, when everything kind of goes on lockdown. I don't know. Will cooler heads prevail in that scenario still? I mean, because everyone's going to be vying for resources, you know what I mean?
I mean, most people don't even know where to go to begin to do that process. When you think about the average amount of people in the city, like how would they even know a farmer to contact to get a cow, and would they even know a butcher, and how to even schedule a date out to get that beef butchered out? Probably very few. Because the reason I mention that is we just did get a whole cow, and I'm not fasting at all. I'm eating beef every night, like steaks. Had T-bones last night. But you're going to have to get these things done before all of this occurs. You're not going to really be able to run around and have all that as a smooth process once this either financial contagion locks up or the food or both simultaneously, where your petrol is going to be $15 a gallon. Mainly it's men that are the butchers, so these guys that are doing that, they're going to charge more, obviously, because their electric cost is going to be higher, the freezer cost. You ever gone into a freezer after they butcher that thing? It's like, down 15 degrees Fahrenheit. So what happens if there's no refrigeration? Now, I'll tell you one thing, though, is we wanted to have the Amish, they butchered a whole pig for us last year. It was about 300-pound hog. And we wanted to go back to them to do the cow this time, the steer, and they're like, no, they're closed. They don't have any refrigeration. So they only do any kind of meat processing packing in the wintertime from November, let's say November to December, January, February, and then they wind it up in March. So they're only, even the Amish butchers are only open 5 months a year because they have to work in the cold season with the chill. If that's gonna be your backup plan to quickly run out and buy a full cow or get a beef and then get some pork processed somewhere, you're gonna be in line with probably 100 other people, and those 100 other people have already done business with them probably. So you're gonna be in line there in a queue somewhere.
Well, where it really gets sketchy, David, is once people's minds process that everything is limited. Let's say you could even get that done. You're sitting in a line. That might be the last time I'd be able to do this type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, so when it hits people's minds, like this is limited. And again, I have to come at it from a Christian standpoint. We obviously have to have faith and God will take care of this kind of thing. I'm talking about like the average day person who's not really living by the rule of faith. But once it hits their head like that, and that's where it's going to start to get sketchy and scary, because who's to say, on your way home from that trip, someone just doesn't take you out. That's my cow too, pal, the type of thing. You know what I mean? So that's where it's going to start getting scary. When people realize this is limited, you know what I mean? Or it's going to be very scarce. Then people are going to freak.
Yeah, and when does that become dangerous to even be on the road after dark, transiting somewhere? Because I'll bring you back to the Bill Holter interview. Anybody out there, I would highly encourage you to listen to this interview. Like, Bill Holter is very no-nonsense, never gives time, date stamps, never gives price projections or anything. But he came out on the record and actually stated in his interview, this is the first time I'm ever going to give a date for an event. So he feels that everything is going to unravel here in under the next 6 months, that there will be no election, and that'll be part of the reason to have no election. At the same time, the money changers will flip over the table, starting another war. So he said we're going to be up at around 1.5 trillion just for the interest payments here as we come into the beginning of 2025. And at that point, then we're over 2.3 trillion by the end of 2025. There's just no way. And then 2026, we're up around 4 trillion just for interest. Like, there's no way to pay this back. And the further it goes down the road to the unbelievability of just nonsensicalness, it has to end before then. They was saying at the minimum, as soon as this contagion is going to sweep the planet. Now, he gives a time date on when this event starts within the next 6 months. The entire financial system, as you know, will be completely wiped out within 72 hours. At the bare minimum, when the first day of contagion, when this thing starts, gasoline is going to rocket to $15 a gallon. So think about that just in itself. And then gasoline stations are probably, this has happened, I remember when the pipeline broke, and this is way out here in East Tennessee, one of the local gas stations just turned off all their pumps. And they said no gas, just no gas. But there was gas there. They were just waiting for it to rise higher in the day and then turn the pumps back on, and they got in trouble for doing that. But if it goes from $4 to $15, they're turning off the pumps. I assure you, they're turning off the pumps, waiting for higher prices. Like the availability of things that you hit it on the head right there. The availability of things, when people understand there's a scarcity factor, A, there's going to be more people running to get the same product, but B, those selling the products understand there's more people out there and they can gouge you on the price. So what do you have for tradability? You're going to give them an ounce of silver for what? How many gallons of gasoline?
Yeah, and that's why I keep telling people, get what you can now and properly store it now. And then, like you said, self-sufficiency aspect comes into it. For my situation, hydroponics makes more sense to do it inside because, quite honestly, if I didn't, well, first of all, I don't have the room in my backyard to do it. But, I mean, I could just see people scavenging it or taking it. And unless I had a system in place with someone with a shotgun to watch my garden 24/7, then, you know what I mean? There's just too many people piled up where I am I wouldn't feel safe doing a garden outside. So I have to do everything inside. But limited resource syndrome, man. Once people realize that I don't know if I'll get this product again, you know, type of thing, that's when the everyday average person is gonna pop and lose it. And this is what's going to make the coming commie CBDC system so more attractive to people, unfortunately, right? And they're going to go down that path and take it. They're going to choose their stomachs over their souls because they know this it's either this or die, really. You know what I mean? That's what even the early church fathers said. The Antichrist would starve people out of the system, basically. St. Cyril of Jerusalem said that. We can see this all come into place here. And again, I've mentioned this scripture to you, I think, several shows back, where Jesus even warns in the Gospel of Luke that there would be confusion of the waves, distress of nations. And again, we know we're getting closer to the elections. We could see that happening. We see the nations already really getting a little unriled here due to a wide variety of reasons. There's the IRS kind of thing. I mean, people are on edge, man. It's ready to pop off. But do you want to make a prediction in terms of an October surprise? You got an October surprise for us?
Well, I do believe that geopolitically and what we're seeing in the workings of the economy and governments around the world are going to use this time to distract and create the largest amount of fear, to put that interference pattern in front of you as we come through this natural electromagnetic field. Perhaps you'll be so worried about a small limited nuclear exchange. You'll be so worried about the collapsed economy where you might be standing in a bread line to even worry about or even notice or perceptualize that something has changed in front of you while you're struggling for the dailies. And that's not going to be me, and that's sure, Eric, is not going to be you, but it's going to be billions of people who didn't prepare and those who are just being strung along with this complacency narrative that's been put in place through our media systems. So I would anticipate, for sure in July, the ramp up and the uptick in madness is the best way to describe it, will be all-encompassing, every day, all day, to reset the system at the same time. Because they could reset it during this electromagnetic effect here of, like I say, higher tides. Oh, we can't trade. Humans might freak out. If you start to see a little bit more crazy behavior, especially after July, that'd be directly related to interference in our regular, synapses firing and relating to each other in the brain. So everything is going to uptick tremendously after this next month or so. Once we get into June, at the end of June, into July, they only have a few more months to get everything in place for whatever this natural cycle that God has chosen to give us to reset to. I really believe it's part of this battle between dark and light. Is we're given this opportunity in this particular geometry of our solar system to allow us to see through this darkness for what it is, and perhaps that's the catalyst that will then allow us to take this planet back. But if you were the dark side of things and the powers that want to entrench yourselves and continue to control, you would make sure that most of humanity would not be aware that they have seen something different or perceived something different, and you would set up conditions to terrify them that they're in such a fear-heightened state that it just passes them by. And I'm wondering how intense this new field will be, even for, like I say, seconds, minutes, hours, that our world will change just based on that. But this is what I truly and absolutely in my heart feel, that the elite are against the time clock. We see everything running away Why is everything happening now and intensifying so much now? Well, you can see this is the timeline they're running against to try to maintain control. At the same time that the weather is going to absolutely, the hailstones we've seen are coming, they're 2, 3, 4, 5 pound hailstones coming down out of the sky. Now, it would not surprise me if they reach 10 pounds by the time we reach into October. And I'll leave it there.